Cindy's a business owner with Daryl and I.
Gotcha.
She's the quiet, sort of behind the scenes person. So
meet and get into it.
we're both named Smith, but we're not any relation. Everyone thinks that. Daryl and I owned the office first, and then Cindy used to work for us, and then basically we decided we needed someone else to take on all the staff management and the bookwork.
Yep.
So that was Cindy. So she does all the non-out there face of the business, if that makes sense. So we take all the glory and she sits behind the scenes and does all the work while we drive around the countryside.
There's new people who are starting to work as well.
We're growing the business. So this year, basically, we've ventured out and we've got 3 sales consultants, which we've only had for the last 12 months, would be 12 to 18 months. So the story there is obviously Jaden and Tanika, and then we've got Rachel, and then Daryl and I have 2 PAs, so they sort of work behind the scenes as well. And then Cindy has a young girl helping her as well with property management and everything else. But you don't really see any of those people. So out the back we've got another sort of 4 people. But Jaden's obviously coming from a plumbing background, Tanique's from hairdressing. That's worked really well. Rachel's the Mole Creek Cabins as well. So yeah, we're all busy.
Can you talk a little bit about the business and where it covers?
Poor Cindy had to say because I'm a chatterbox.
Well, we've basically got probably the biggest franchise area in the Harcourts group in Tassie. So our area stretches from the Hadspen Bridge all the way up to Sassafras and then expands out from there as well. We try and stay inside our franchise area as much as we can, but obviously from time to time we do cross borders and that comes at a little penalty to us, but if we've got family, friends, whatever in those areas, we can go into those areas and do bits and pieces.
And probably between the 5 of us, we struggle to cover that area. So by the time you go to Liffey and show a property in the morning and then Rosevale in the afternoon. So ideally we'd like another sales consultant. Carrick Way would be really good. Yeah, because there's plenty of area out there that we could cover more.
Can you talk about how you ended up in real estate yourselves?
So I started out as a hairdresser. Basically, I owned both the salons in Deloraine and decided I was retiring. So I went and home, started retirement and did all the ironing and the cooking, got bored, got a call from Ralph Heffernan, who actually, I started in this office and now we're back in the office again. So I started with First National. He rang me one day and said, "Are you interested in a job?" And I said, "I'm not sure, I'll come in and have a chat." So I came in, started the next week and went from there, and then Daryl came in basically about 6 months later and we both started. And then in that process, during that period, we got offered to buy a franchise of Harcourts in the area, so we stepped into that. And we've been 16 years in Harcourts in the area, so... And then Cindy was a beautiful employee, and your journey is what?
I was in banking for probably about 17 years. Started off next door when it was the ANZ and then moved into Launceston, the ANZ. Took a redundancy there because my job was farmed out to Melbourne. So then moved up the road to Westpac at Kings Meadows. I worked in several different branches across Westpac in Tassie and then took a redundancy because my job role changed and wasn't happy with the way it was all going, so took a redundancy and ended up down here at the Bendigo Community Bank, which was a bit of a culture shock for me after working for a big bank. And found out that Donna and Daryl were looking for somebody, so it's just been there ever since.
You would have been
11, 12
I was going to say 11 or 12 years,
yeah.
And then eventually we brought Cindy on as a business owner. Since then we've sold the business once to someone else and Cindy stayed in, and then we've brought our part back again. Two and a half years ago. So we had another retirement, but we've come back. But the next one is it, that's finished.
We've got a plan.
What are some of the highlights of your job?
For me, probably meeting and greeting people. It's very similar to hairdressing. I like people. So I suppose you get to go out with people and talk to them. I also like the fact that we've been able to uphold with our business, in my opinion, a very professional sort of business structure. So I've had to slightly lapse on that a little bit with Jaden, who's decided that he doesn't want to wear a tie because we're very corporate based. So we had a little chat about it, and then I said, okay, that's fine, don't wear a tie. It's working well for him, so now it's working for us. So yeah, for me, just people, I suppose, people management, and I just like to be out and about. It's a very easy job in the sense that you can be very flexible with your time. Can I just say something? Poor Cindy works 7 days a week. Sometimes she's in here at 8 o'clock at night when we're at home relaxing.
I don't know, I suppose it's very similar to banking, because I do all the financial bits and pieces, which really I enjoy doing that sort of thing. Staff management, some days I enjoy it, some days I don't. It is a bit flexible. Donna and I can sort of work between each other, and we head off and do a few bits and pieces of our own, and it's pretty flexible. And yeah, I get to meet lots of interesting people and see lots of interesting places.
Overall, we've got good staff, though, really. Yeah. Like, we've got a real mix of staff and very, very different personalities. So that's sometimes, in a corporate structure, we try and it gels well. So if someone comes in and they want to list their house and we think it's going to be better suited to Jayden, then Jayden will get it. If it's going to be very suited to Rachel, then they'll take it on. So it works well in that sort of sense.
So some of the agents have
just more personality based, really, I think. Like, Rachel's got a very strong, outgoing personality. Jayden's very laid back and sort of very easy care sort of thing. Tanique's, I don't know, she's just an all-rounder, really, isn't she? She's very flexible. So, and I suppose when someone comes in or inquires, we ask if they've got an agent in mind, and if they don't, then we'll just feed it out to whoever we think's going to gel the best with that person. And it mainly just comes down to personality. That's basically it.
So you've mentioned some of the challenges before. What are some of the challenges that you find?
We thought COVID was going to be a challenge. Daryl and I, we've got accommodation and real estate, so we thought this is not good. But both of them went the complete opposite. So basically, real estate went crazy, but with Tasmanians. So Tasmanians decided they were going to move around the state rather than staying where they were. So that was really good. Challenges for us at the moment, interest rate rises, obviously, and probably just a lot of the media is talking about, I suppose, city structure instead of country. So we struggle with that when they say that prices are dropping in Hobart, prices are dropping. It's not relevant to the Meander Valley, really. Mainly our market's 80% mainland people, so we find that they just keep coming.
In terms of purchasing properties, it's 80% mainlanders.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We probably have, would you agree, only 20% local turnaround? Yeah, so, and generally when we're out with people, it's interesting because they're looking here in the Meander Valley or the Huon Valley. So if they've chosen a country sort of place, that's the two areas that they're looking at. So lifestyle, I think, and just the community-based sort of thing, so is what it seems to be. And I suppose because our area is so big, we've got lifestyle properties. Like, that's sort of what they're looking for, really small acreage.
Close enough to big cities. Is there any advice that you would give to people?
If someone was buying in the area, obviously in Tasmania, it's still buyer beware. So other states, obviously, we're originally from the mainland, but people will already have a building inspection done, have all their, things met with council and things. Here, it's a bit unstructured, and it's up to purchasers to do their own building inspection, to pay for it, to go to council, check out the records, and then it'll become part of their conveyancing process. So I can probably just say, choose an agent you feel comfortable with. Although the agent works for the vendor, they're under an obligation under the Act to disclose anything they know about a property. So just ask a lot of questions when you go to look at a property. We have a lot of people now who buy property sight unseen through video walkthroughs. That seems to become a lot more popular, doesn't it? So we're doing a lot of those before people come.
And you mentioned that if it's 80% mainlanders that are potentially coming down properties, were there specific things that they were looking for in properties?
Of course, a river, a mountain view, acreage, and they very, very rarely come up. So, and we've obviously got a database, so it gets fed out to our database before it goes live. So sometimes we've actually got purchases for properties before it's on the internet. Everyone wants the three things: river, mountains, lifestyle.
In terms of like double glaze, is that much of a consideration, or is that sort of more once you arrive and then you work it out?
Yeah, no, and you find that most people have sort of put aside money to do that, like renos and things. In my eyes, when I go out now, it's very hard to find a property. A lot of people are looking around that $550 range, and we're struggling to get properties now around that are lifestyle properties out of town. So that's really hard, isn't it?
Can you talk about any of the more memorable properties that you've...
We've just sold one recently at Wagina, which was total river frontage on the Mersey River. Mud brick property, beautiful river flats. And because anyone would buy that at any other time, but of course there was floods in the mainland and on the media in the mainland. So every time someone looked at it, they would know we're worried about the floods, but that was just sort of something that happened. I don't know, we've sold lots of properties. I don't know how many we've sold, probably, I reckon we've probably sold nearly 300 properties over the course of the last probably 10 years and more. Gee, there's so many. Me personally, I'd rather show a small alternate property. Like I love going to Weirtina at Jackie's Marsh and showing properties, than a big luxurious one. And even though we do list those, sometimes they're a long, hard sell. So I think sometimes as a sales consultant, you're better off having 2 or 3 smaller ones and concentrating on those than the large lifestyle ones. Jaden's just got a beautiful property coming up at, is it Donna? Yes. Yeah. So it's a large farm. I think it's 500 acres, 3 houses. So that's very exciting for him as a new agent.
Some people have ideas about real estate agents. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I suppose we always try and be professional, make sure that we disclose everything that we're meant to disclose and act in a professional manner and make sure that we abide by all the rules and regulations. So, you know, we can only do what we've got no control over, you know, what other agents do or anything like that. So we can only try and be professional and uphold our professional attitude and everything.
Yeah, and I think with Harcourts too, we're very strict about training. So you won't come into this office and be sent away with a contract for you to fill in. So the agents all know how to go through contracts. They'll sit down with you, they'll go to your house and sit down. So basically, part of our ethos is doing the right thing. We encourage our agents to disclose everything about the house because it'll only come back to bite you anyway. And they're all trained. We do regular training every quarter on everything contracts. There's just been changing contracts at the moment. So every Wednesday we'll have a staff meeting. We'll run through something that's relevant sort of thing for a training.
How do you see the industry changing?
Ideally, we're probably a little bit old-fashioned here still because we've got properties in the window, whereas a lot of agents don't. A lot of it now is changing. You don't come in and speak to someone about houses. Like, we're happy to do that, but people just don't do it. They just do everything off the internet. It makes me, sometimes I'm like, why do people do that? They'll send 3 emails instead of just picking up the phone. So, and they don't understand, like some days I might get, I don't know, 50 to 100 emails on properties. I don't want to spend all my day doing emails, so I may not get back to someone for 3 or 4 days. Yet they'll send 3 or 4 more emails instead of just picking up the phone and saying, look, we want to look at this property. So that's my hardest thing that I've had to learn to deal with. And probably just text messaging and that sort of thing and social media messages rather than phone calls.
I suppose technology, since I've been really sort of taken over the industry a lot more, even with property management now, when we go out and do reports, we've got these new little cameras that take a 360-degree photo of the room, and it just makes life so much easier in property management when you're going out to do things like that. So there's lots of little technical things that are happening behind the scenes that just help day to day in the office sort of thing.
But we're forced towards that now because it's so competitive, so you have to keep up with technology, you have to have professional photos, otherwise you just don't get the listings.
Can you talk about the process of valuing a property?
So when I go out to do an appraisal, I suppose there's 2 values to a property really. There's a market value and obviously a bricks and mortar value. Basically we'll go out, we'll do a walkthrough, we'll come back and we'll talk to the owners, or sometimes it's an estate, whatever it is. come back to the office, we'll do, the most important thing is we have what's called a summarisation calculator. I don't think a lot of offices do it, but we'll summarise what the actual house size is, what it's worth a square, what the blocks were, any improvements, landscaping and things like that. And then we'll do market comparisons. So a lot of people that we go out to visit will say, oh, this property's on the market for X amount, so ours should be worth this. And we have to explain to them we're not really interested in what's on the market, it's only what's sold. So that's what's relevant to the sales results. I suppose for us, we then take the appraisal back. We always say to the client that it's obviously their choice. We're there for a guide on what they want to price their property for, but we're not going to list something that's absolutely stupid because it would take too long to sell. But it's also interesting nowadays because the market's a little bit unknown, because it just depends who's out there. Like a buyer really guides the price. So that's how we do it. So we give a discussion about an option, whose price is it, or do we sort of band together and sort of work out something, and then we'll do a list. So, but we don't take it on what's on the market. It's always sold properties and basically bricks and mortar, what it's worth and what the land's worth. So, yeah. Property management's a little bit more difficult probably.
Well, it's basically what's been rented and what price they've been rented at and what their inclusions and all those sorts of things are in the property and what the demand is. Obviously, rental properties are really driven by demand, like the price. So during COVID, the prices has just skyrocketed because there was so much demand, but it's come back a bit now, so everything's levelled out, so you can pretty well give it a reasonable appraisal and know that that's what you're going to get.
Are there specific things that people look for in a rental property?
Yes. Pets. Whether they have pets, and I suppose the location, is it going to be, a good commute to work? That's where I think Deloraine is a really good area because we're halfway between Launceston and Devonport, so if people are looking for that little bit of a lifestyle, they can commute either way. If one of them works in Devonport, the other one works in Launceston, that's a really good area for them. I think just something comfortable, and we get all sorts, like people that are just looking for something really basic, and then we get people that are looking for something a little bit upscale and upmarket. So
we've probably got the largest property management at the moment in this area. It's sort of the bane in my side sometimes because sales consultants never love property management, but property management is what holds the business all together. So we've had to sort of step back and I suppose thank property management at stages when sales is a bit quiet, because it pays all the bills and pays the staff and things like that. So it's an interesting concept. It takes up a lot of resources, but although you don't think there's a lot happening there is a lot happening there, sort of thing. And for example, we've just had all the frosts with the broken pipes, and Cindy worked exceptionally hard on the weekend, although we did some of it. But it's a 24-hour thing, property management. There's no stopping it, because if people don't have power or they don't have water, like obviously they're ringing up through an emergency situation. So it's not something that stops when the doors close.
What do you think will happen with property values and the market over the next 5 years?
In the Meander Valley area, we've always stayed reasonably steady. So I can always say that when there's a drop in the market, we've been able to hold fairly well. So COVID, obviously we went crazy and the market just grew, and we were getting unheard of, like 40 and 50 lots of people through open homes. Now we're back to maybe 1 to 3 lots of people through an open home, and sometimes none is realistic in the current market. I can't see a drop, I can only see a growth in this area. We've just got too many mainland people coming that are selling properties, in other areas, and it's still cheap here. So Tasmania is still a cheap option. Hopefully interest rates will stay where they are, because that seems to be a big factor at the moment. But everyone really wants a Tasmanian lifestyle. That's what they're coming for, a Tasmanian lifestyle, really. So some properties we've sold for people, I think we've got one client that originally we sold for from the mainland, and we've just sold them their 6th house. Pat and Anna, thank you. And they tell me this is their last one, but they say that every time. So we've got a lot of return customers now. Early retirees, I'd say. Not a lot of family transactions, but just that early retiree. We've got a fair base of investors who'll buy rent with plans to come in a few years when they retire. So we've probably got a quarter of our rent roll that's investors doing that. So often we'll sell a property and then we'll turn it over to the property management department and it'll stay a rental for 3 or 4 years. Some people will then move or some will change and it'll be back on the market again. So the other thing is property management is a good feed into the sales as well.
Part of Deloraine.
Me's the riverbank. It's just beautiful.
For me, home. I love being home. I don't get to stay home very often. Like our job's a 7-day-a-week thing, and often we're out till 7 o'clock at night because most parties want to transact after hours. So just home, the bush. Yeah, I just like the native side of it.